You're listening to the Ask a Photographer podcast. My name is Mike, and I'm from biblino.com. Thank you to everyone that's been listening to the podcast so far and has submitted their questions, because without your questions, there is no podcast. So if you'd like to be featured and receive a free preset pack, please go to biblino.com/ask. And just before we go into today's question from Liam, I just want to let everybody know that I am opening up the opportunity to submit guest posts to the website. If you like to write about photography workflow, Lightroom, general photography tips, marketing and photography business, please go to my contact page and contact me through there, and I'd love to hear some of your suggestions. Now on today's question, which comes from Liam, and he asks, why do people on the internet list their camera settings when they post a photo? An example is F5.6 ISO 1600 6-minute exposure. It seems that the settings are only specific to them and it doesn't take into account post-processing. I know this for a fact, as I took an astro photography photo in a very similar location and the settings were way off. My version of the photo came out very overexposed. Hey Liam, thanks for your question. Why do people post the settings online? Well, quite simply, it was a way for people, and it still is, as a good starting point to help them learn about camera settings. So, if you want to get out of auto mode, you've got 3 settings you've got to play with. Which ones do you change, and what should they be? Is it useful? I really don't think so. And you've hit the nail on the head there, Liam. It is specific to the person that's taken the photograph, because even being in the same spot, as you've pointed out, got you different results. Things like the conditions that you're taking the photo in have massive influence of how your photo is. It could have been very dark. It could have been other objects within the photo that were reflecting light and made everything overexposed. It could have been anything really. The lens that you're using could allow more light, or the sensor was more sensitive than other people, than the camera that was being used by the other person. So there's a lot of room for error there just by letting people know your camera settings. And I know that some people do list the type of camera and then the lens, and some people even say that they've post-processed the photo. I think some of that is just to let people know what they've done to the photo. It's not always about, hey, this is the settings to use to get the same result, because you've also pointed out that some people don't even point out how much post-processing they've done to a photo. So therefore, we kind of get this idea that, hey, as we see the photo, it's straight out of the camera. And I know some people list that, but it's not always the case. And so, yeah, why do people do it? It's been going for ages. I know when I first started digital photography in 2004, forums were a big thing back there, and that's what people did. They post the photo, and they would say the first reply would be, if they didn't post the settings, they'd say, what were your settings? And it was just a way for people to learn. But yeah, I agree with you completely there, Liam. It's specific to the person, and it's not always, you don't always get told the information that you should know, especially how much processing was done. We could probably learn photography in another way that would help us. Now, I know that for new photographers, to learn, the 3 most important things when we're taking a photo, aperture and f-stop. Sorry, they're 2 of the same things. F-stop and ISO and shutter speed. They've got to just go out and try and take photos and make mistakes and learn from that, but they also have to know why they're using those settings. By using, say, 2.8, am I going to get, how much of the photo am I going to get in focus by using that setting, as opposed to, say, F11? That's what I think us photographers need to do, is to pre-visualize our photos, and that's would probably get better results rather than just copying people's settings. The whole point of post-processing too, as you pointed out here, Liam, your photo came out overexposed. You don't know the fact that that guy, or person I should say, had done maybe multiple exposures, and he blended them together. Or they exposed for one part of the scene and had to really work the other part to get it to look the way it did. I've often gone out and photographed with friends and been quite close to each other, and we still get very, very different looking photos because of the processing we've done to the photos and the way how we originally had composed the photo and exposed the photo, like, you know, the initial exposure of the elements within the photo and what we decided to, you know, maybe bring out a little bit of detail and so on and so forth. So this whole thing of putting settings online, I have also seen, and I've noticed well-known photographers do a lot of this as well, and they list their settings, and I think it's one way of basically just subliminal advertising, I guess. I don't know. It's like I was looking on Instagram the other day, and there was a guy that used the new Nikon D5 and listed the lens and the setting, and it's like, well, he doesn't have to list that, does he? He hasn't done that before, but it's only in the past year. Has he just recently been sponsored? Who knows? I mean, like, I don't think that really helps him, because I know for a fact that this person, he shows how he edits his photos, and what they start with and what they look like in the end are very different. He brings out a lot of the detail, and those camera settings that he puts up are kind of not really relevant. I do think that if you are putting settings up online, it's good when you're doing a comparison. So, like, you're doing a straight out of camera comparison of, it could be of a photo that's with a new lens. Like, let's use an example of you're testing a new lens, right? An older version, a newer version, and people are doing like a review, and you've got them side by side on a tripod, same settings, same conditions, and you're taking a photo, and you're really looking at things like, is it a bit more contrasty, or is it distort towards the edges, things like that, and you kind of get the idea. Okay, well, if they're shooting at, say, f11, and there's distortion or something, you kind of think to yourself, okay, well, and they show all the different f-stops that they're shooting at, then you can kind of get an idea of how the lens is going to perform. And if you were to purchase it, then that that's the type of stuff you may want to edit or work on when you're post-processing. I mean, that's just my thinking when it comes to that, because that's the only time I can actually think that settings be of use. Now, I mean, if anybody listening to this podcast and has any other uses for putting the settings online, please post your answers in the comments. I'd love to hear. It'd be great to start a conversation. Thanks, Lane, for your question. You pretty much hit the nail on the head. It's really specific to the person, and it doesn't always take into account post-processing. So really, it's no use to anyone. Thanks for your question, Liam. I hope that helps. If you have a question that you'd like featured on the show, go to biblino.com/ask to submit your question. I'd love to hear what you think of the show by going to iTunes or Stitcher and giving me a review and a rating. And don't forget to subscribe so you get notifications of new episodes. Thanks for listening. Until next time, get out and take more photos. Oh, look, it's a cat in front of a sunset.